So, welcome to Brave, Bold, Brilliant. I am here today with Rob Ferguson, and Rob is the founder of Ferguson Alliance, but has had a huge career both in the corporate world, but in the last period of his career has been very focused on family businesses. So, we're going to have a great conversation today, Rob, and nice to see you all the way from across the pond.
Yes, thank you, Jeanette. Glad to be here.
Oh, well, it's wonderful and it's really nice to see you. So Rob, just before we get into a lot of the detail around family businesses and kind of your experience of working with those organizations, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your career journey and where life started for you and how you ended up really focusing on family businesses?
Sure. So the first 25 years of my career, I spent climbing the corporate ladder. After I got out of the Army here, I went straight to work for a large multi-billion-dollar conglomerate and was part of their management training program and had a rocket career. Really enjoyed it. And then the division I was working in, we were notified we were going to be divested. And I thought the world had come to an end. And instead, it didn't. I was part of a small group of managers. I was the youngest. We ended up doing a leverage management buyout. So we spun that little company out and stood it up. And that's a whole different story. But anyway, I had got a great experience from that. Eventually, we fought. Well, golly, we grew up from 30 million to probably 500 million over a 15-year period. Took it public along the way. I became the CEO of that. So that was my first kind of experience. And then my second big experience was CEO of a family business. It was fifth generation, 17 cousins. Um, I was the first non-family member CEO. It was a hot mess. It was my job was to turn it around and then to ultimately sell it, which in fact we did do. I brought in a professional management team. We turned it around and we sold it to a publicly traded Australian company. And then while I was doing that work, I was with another family business, 100 years old, 50 to 70 shareholders. I can't remember how many, but I was on their board. And they were very successful in transitioning from each generation. So it was like a tale of two cities. I was as a CEO the worst of times, and then I was a board member in the best of times. And I just was, I like to learn, and I was just intrigued about family businesses, and the more I studied it, and the more I found out that family business have such a huge impact on, I'm focused on North America's economy, but global economy, right? And here in North America, 62% of our GDP in the United States is from family businesses. They're the primary employer, so it's critically important. And I was at an age at that time where I realized after I climbed the corporate ladder and I got to the top of the ladder, there was nothing there. I mean, I'm talking holistically, right? I always thought, oh, once I get there, it's going to be utopia, and I realized there was more to life, and so I was at an age and a maturity that I really wanted to serve and give back, and I found family businesses is the best place to do that. Take the corporate experience I had and try to apply that into family businesses. And anyway, that was 16, 17 years ago, and here we are.
Wow, and you're still obviously passionate about what you do. You still really enjoy the field that you're in, Rob, because I can see the energy.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, you kind of light up. And Rob, I wanted to ask you, with that transition for you out of large corporate, and you said you
Yeah.
got to the top.
Yeah.
You're really at the top, the pinnacle of your career. You've worked your way up all those years, and you get there, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you look around and you go, oh. Maybe it's not quite what I thought it was going to be after this sort of big vision that you had for yourself. How difficult was that moment for you then, actually sort of to realize, wow, I've put all my heart and soul into this, and actually it's not what I thought
Well,
it was going to be?
it was hugely difficult. I mean,
Mm.
it was yeah, I would say it was a period of major transformation for me. I actually took a year off. I intentionally just said, I'm just going to take a sabbatical and try to figure things out because everything I was striving for that I thought to be true ended up there was just more ladder. I mean, there was not, once I got to I just looked up, there was more ladder. So I had to make the transition for my perspective. Instead of climbing the ladder, I needed to get off the ladder, and I needed to be grounded. So I needed to get down to the ground and ground myself and really serve others. And you know, I think I went more from tactics to purpose and being purpose driven. And that was, like I said, that was probably 16, 17 years ago. And it's just so much more fulfilling living in purpose for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great piece of advice, actually, because, I always really enjoyed my corporate career, actually. I was never one of those people that didn't enjoy it. And when I made the transition to becoming a portfolio business owner and an investor,
Yeah.
actually, it wasn't coming from a place of not liking what I was doing, but
Right.
I again had to sort of find my new identity, if you
For
like, and
sure.
what my new purpose was going to be. So I think for anyone that's listening or watching this that might be in that sort of thinking, oh, actually, maybe I need to move into a different phase. And,
Hmm.
I think this is really, really a valuable lesson that you've shared there around stopping, taking time out, and just letting almost decompress from that corporate world.
Yeah.
But and when you did that, Rob, did you immediately know what the next move was going to be, or did you have to just have that space and it just kind of came to you over time?
No, I did not know. It came over time. I was intentional about really creating a space to be thoughtful. I started doing things. I got busy doing stuff, like, okay, well, maybe I can go buy a business and get a private equity sponsor. Let me do this, do that. And I realized that my doing was getting in the way of me really figuring out what I wanted to be. Okay. Because so many people that I know get stuck what I call in the do have loop. Well, I have to have a job, so I got to do this. I have to have money, so I have to do more of this. And without the context of what is it that I'm striving to become, then you just get stuck in this do have. So for me, during that sabbatical, it took me a year to go, okay, wait a minute. Oh, I can create a new identity. I can be whatever I want to be, and let me discover what that might become. And once I kind of let go of and got myself out of that do have loop, things started happening for me. And I was invited to help a business. I was referring in, and the next thing I know, I'm actually being a help. I'm being useful to others, and I'm helping them grow their business or solve a problem. So I'm working through them, right? And it became very, very fulfilling for me. I didn't even think I was working, quite honestly. And then it was Christmas. I can't remember which year it was. My wife came and said, "Well, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to decide what you're going to do?" And I thought, well, I guess I ought to decide. So that's when I just said, "Okay, well, I'm a business advisor." I just said, okay, well, I'll just be a business advisor, and hung up a shingle on the outside of my door, and voila, my new identity. I was no longer CEO; I was a business advisor, and I did that as a sole proprietor for, I don't know, about 10 years or so, or 9 years. And I really missed building something, and I really missed having a team. And so I made a decision. I wanted to partner with two other younger guys to help me build a partnership. And anyway, COVID came along. That scared them off. They didn't want to start a business during COVID. I thought that was the right time to start it. So I did it on my own. So here I am. We're not a very big firm. We have 8 employees.
Yeah, but actually, what you talk about there, living with purpose and identity and all of these things, it's so important because we change and we evolve as we get a little bit older as well. I've been around the block for many years in business as well, and I think you're right. If you absolutely love what you do and you feel like you're contributing, then you're normally going to get better results and you're going to feel more fulfilled throughout that process as well. And that's clearly what's happened with you. But Rob, I want to loop back around what you were saying with the family business that you got involved in, where you were the CEO, but you were the only non-family member
Right.
of that particular business. How did you navigate through that? And I'm really intrigued about the family relationships and kind of some of the positives of family businesses, but also some of the challenges, because people are people.
Sure.
But how did you manage being the one, not only the only non-family member, but also the CEO running the shop?
Yeah. Very interesting. I'll try to be succinct here. A friend of mine was an executive recruiter, and so she kind of recruited me into this. Now, this business did have a formal governance structure. So they had a board of directors. They had a couple of independents on their board, primarily professionals, like their attorney and their CPA. And then they had some of the family members on the board, not all of them. So through the recruiting process, I was introduced and they liked me and they wanted to hire me. So they decided to hire me. It took probably 3 months for me to negotiate my employment agreement. Long time. And I think you'll be surprised. It took me no time to negotiate my compensation. Not what the biggest sticking point was the level of authority of decisions that I would have. And
Yeah.
that they really it took a while, but I wasn't going to take the job if I couldn't come in and do the job because it was a turnaround situation. You know, when you're a CEO in a growing company, that requires different skill sets. When you're a CEO of a company that's on fire and it's a turnaround, that requires a different leadership approach. So I knew that I needed, there's not going to be a lot of consensus building and collaboration. It's going to be a lot of probably some autocratic decisions. So anyway, finally, we got breakthrough on that, and I'll just tell a short little story here. So the first week, I walked around, and the board of directors told me that the solution to the problem was just sell more. And I wasn't sure about that. Anyway, make a long story short, all the cousins, I called them into the office my second week, asked them to bring in their car keys and their Platinum American Express cards, and hand them over to me. And everybody lost their job except for two, because they were actually producing. They were valuable. I mean, we had some cousins in there that showed up to work maybe once a month, and got some pretty nice salaries from it. So it was a what I would call, they had moved off the rail, and they had become a family first business. So they were serving the needs and wants of the family as a priority over what the business needs were. And so I had to make a radical change. And I remember, of course, I had the authority to do it, and I was empowered by the board. And the board knew ahead of time I was going to do this. And they said, well, good luck. But they had to give over their stuff too. And anyway, um, that's what we did. And so it was a major transformation. And so we needed to do that and make a radical shift to become a business first family. And we didn't quite get there with all the family members. You can imagine there was a lot of entitlements and things, but with the governing body of the family members, we were able to get there. And that shift allowed the team to actually do some major transformations. And we had some difficult times. We had two labor unions inside of this business, and so we had to negotiate through them to do the things we needed to do to turn around, get it positioned so the business could be sold. So that's how it worked on.
I love that. That's great. Hand over your keys. Hand over. Give me a house. Not quite.
Well, they kept it was everything that was non-related to business that they were running through the business. We needed to make a symbol. I mean, it was some money, right? But it was more important for all the employees. It was the only way I was going to be able to get the employees on board too. Because I had to do some changes in compensation. I had to do a lot of things, right? So I needed the owners to lead that. They didn't really want to lead it, but I made sure that the groups of employees knew that they were leading. Hey, look, this is what the owners have done, so let's follow them.
Yeah, no. And what sector was this business in, Rob? What was it? What was it all about?
Industrial packaging.
So before we continue, I want to speak directly to those of you who are listening and thinking, I know I'm capable of more, but I need structure. I need some help. Because here's what I've actually learned after, more than 3 decades in business. Ambition without clarity creates frustration, and motivation without structure, it really does fade very, very fast. So that's exactly why we created Rise Academy. And Rise Academy is not theory. It isn't fluffy motivation, although you will be motivated. And it certainly isn't another online course that you never finish. It's actually a fully structured growth environment for ambitious entrepreneurs, leaders, and founders who absolutely are ready to do all of these things, sharpen their strategy, elevate their leadership, increase revenue with intention, and build businesses that actually support the life that they want. And inside Rise Academy, we focus on the foundations most people skip: leading yourself, leading your teams, and leading the business. It's about clarity, standards, decision-making, commercial intelligence, and execution. Because scaling, it really isn't about doing more. It's actually about doing the right things and doing the things right consistently. So if you're serious about stepping up into your next level of your leadership, your business life, and not just consuming content, but actually implementing it, then Rise Academy was absolutely built for you. So you can find all the details on our website. Go to www.brave-bold-brilliant.com. And now let's get back to the show.
Right. And how many employees?
Just under 300.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of mid-sized sort of
Yeah. I
payroll.
would say middle market. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But nonetheless, that's still a lot of people to try and bring on the journey with you in the right way. Right way. And Rob, obviously you had some probably some tension there. You had some people buying in. You probably had some people not buying into the future. But when you came through the other side, of all of this, what was the feeling from the family then when you'd actually proved that this was the right thing to do and you'd got through and really put the business in a different situation completely?
Well, I think there was mixed feelings, to be honest. I mean, not everybody got on board. Not everybody had the same equal amount of shares, and so I would say there was some that were really trying to hold on to grandfather's or great grandfather's legacy, and he was the sales executive. I should be the sales executive because I should inherit that role. That was kind of the thinking. And then there was others is just saying, "Hey, look, I'm so glad we don't have this burden on us anymore. We were able to, get it positioned in a way where we could sell the business." So um, it wasn't fully butterflies and unicorns at the end. Okay.
No.
I mean, there was 3 branches of the family, and I think a couple of the branches really were having some struggles personally, familial struggles, which had bled into the business. But once I got there and brought in a team that was non-family related, that kind of put a boundary of protection around the business so that those family dysfunctionalities didn't bleed back into the business.
Yeah, because I guess the question it really is around, I know that you're very passionate about family businesses. You believe that you can create an infinite legacy, by passing it on multi-generations, etc. But I guess what are some of those biggest mistakes that family businesses make that jeopardize the chance of creating an infinite legacy? I mean, you've touched on a couple through this example, but are there any other things that you've seen over these years that kind of prohibits that infinite legacy being created in a family business?
Well, the first one that I mentioned it is not making a conscious choice. I mean, a real conscious strategic choice. Am I going to be a business first family or a family first business? That has to be deliberate. Once that choice is made, then all the other decisions kind of live from that. And you can always go back and say, well, wait a minute, we said we're a business first family. Is this decision lining up with that? So family first businesses are great. In fact, most businesses start off that way, right? I mean, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're sole proprietor, you're just trying to get groceries on the table. But as that business goes through its life cycle, there needs to be a natural shift and philosophy to move from family first to business first. And it's that inflection point that not attended to can be very problematic. And that's why 60% or more of the first generation businesses don't make it through the second generation. It's a huge failure rate. And then it bleeds further to the third generation where the statistics are even worse, right? It's like 12 or 13% maybe might make it to the third generation. So that's a strategic, conscious decision. And it has to be made consensually with all of the shareholders, majority, minority, doesn't matter. Everybody's got to be part of that, own it, and then live in it. So I'm very passionate about that. I have seen so many businesses be wildly successful because they made that choice, and all their decisions, strategic decisions, are lined up against that. And those who haven't. And then the other, Jeannette, I'll just say, is being indecisive with it, or being opportunistic, saying in the boardroom, yeah, we're a business first family, but yet when it comes to a family perk, well, on this issue, we're going to be family first. Yeah, we're going to hire cousin Harry. Yeah, we know he doesn't really have the talent, but he's a nice guy and he needs a job. So we'll just make an exception here. So when you stand on the threshold of that door going, are we or are we not business first family? That actually becomes worse. And your employees know and understand that. Employees and customers, all of your stakeholders of your business are going to appreciate a business making a declaration that we're a business first family, because they're going to go, oh, you're going to be here for a long term. Oh, you're thinking about the future for me. You're building in succession plans. They want to be part of that. So non-family members understand there isn't a ceiling because my name's not on the door of the building. I have an opportunity to grow my career here inside of this business. So that to me, I mean, I really try to preach this quite a bit. That's the single biggest inflection point of, can this business survive from one generation to the next?
And I mean, I've also advised quite a few businesses that have been founder led, and I always find it a very interesting period around when a business founder is thinking about, do they exit?
Mm-hmm.
Do they sell? Do they pass it on to the next generation? And I'm just interested in your perspective on this, Rob, where maybe the children, the next generation, don't want to take on the business. The parents, maybe, that might be their preference, but the kids just not interested, or they don't want to. How do you deal with that situation from the experiences that you've had?
Well, it depends on where we are in the life cycle of the business. I always encourage everybody to start your succession planning early. I mean, you should start it when you found your business, right? Be thinking about, okay, how am I going to be exiting? Because you can have these kinds of conversations. So I think if it's early, you just build in contingencies that, your children are they're in school, they're school age children. You're making succession planning decisions 20 years from down the road. You don't know if that child's going to be there or not. So we try to coach them and prepare them to think of some other alternatives. When we have a situation where the child just all of a sudden says, I don't want the business, and the founder has been thinking that child's been in the business, say 10 years. We had a case like this. They've been there and they said, no, this isn't for me. It's quite a big upset. And so the role of us that we have is to make sure that owner understands there's optionality. You don't want to just get locked in on one option, and always build in optionality. And we help them discover what those options are. And in the case that I'm talking about, we actually found a non-family member executive who ended up coming in and buying the business from the owner because the children had decided they didn't want to be part of the business.
Well, I mean, you're an example yourself, aren't you? That you went in as a non-family member, as the CEO, and actually as a living, breathing example in your own direct experience there in the role that you played in that as a non-family member coming in. And when things can get emotional and heated, Rob, with the work you do as an advisor, How much of that ends up turning into you being a counselor or a family relations therapist?
Yeah, well, we're dealing with human beings, and so I would have to say most of the time, right? Yeah. So I think for us, when it gets really challenging, it's because human beings' perspective are misaligned. The objective is to try to focus in on what is the real problem, distinct of emotions and reactions. Um, People can have opinions, but that doesn't mean it's factual. And so we have to help them really understand, well, what is the true fact here? What is it that we're really solving? And once we can get all parties to laser in on the real problem, distinct from emotions, then we can get through it pretty easily. But it takes some time, and I think it takes some good professional facilitation at times to do that. And we try to coach our executives to become very good at handling conflict or upsets with that, having difficult conversations.
Yeah, no, and that's it, isn't it? Because, like you say, when people say, "Oh, business, it's only business, it's not personal." Well, it's always personal, even in not even when it's not a family business, because we're human beings with emotions and feelings and
Yeah.
everything that comes with that, And I think sometimes we can dehumanize business sometimes, but actually we can't forget that we are emotional beings, and that's a good thing, right?
Well, particularly some, leaders of businesses, entrepreneurs. I mean, we have a hard driving personality. I mean, we get stuff done. We're high
Yeah.
achievers, and so what happens is we believe we need to fight for being right, right? And so what we try to do is help those individuals, whoever we're working with, is give up trying to be right and fight for what's right. And once
Yeah.
you give up for being right, because when you're trying to fight for being right, that means you're going to make somebody wrong. And so it's really hard to get that solved or get clarity or alignment. So let's back up and let's look at, well, what's really right here? Go back to, hey, we decided we're going to be a business first family. Okay, is this really right for that? Does that really line up? And so I think when human beings can do this in business or outside of business, I see too many arguments. I see too many divorces because somebody's just wanting to stand their ground. I want to be right. I'm right, and you're wrong. You can't get any kind of breakthrough, or solution, or resolution with that attitude. But if you can fight for what's right, I think you can really change the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. I was actually over in the US in December. I went to a Tony Robbins Date with Destiny event, which was completely crazy, right? And I mean, as a Brit, with all of you Americans, we're much more reserved, shall we say, us Brits. But it was a fantastic event, and I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins and personal development and all those things. So I took a huge amount out of it personally and professionally for my business as well. But it was interesting because he did a day on relationships.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said, which is very similar to what you were saying, was, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship?
Yeah.
And very similar concepts. And I think that's absolutely, we get so stuck on our position, don't we, that we can end up with this kind of conflict. And I love that what you've just shared there around actually just focus on what's right, not being right. And that's a great way forward. So let me ask you this, Rob, because clearly you've got high emotional intelligence, you've got a huge amount of experience on the people and business side of things. So when a business is getting stuck, and I think I can see very quickly that you get to the nub of what the problem is or what the real issue is. I think you're able, with your experience, to kind of quickly assess that. For somebody that maybe is leading a business today, they may be the CEO, or they might be leading a team, etc., but maybe things are not going so well. What is the one key question, do you think, that people need to be able to ask of the team, of themselves, of the business, that really helps them get to the bottom of what is really happening? What is the issue in as quick a way as possible?
Why? I mean, I think it takes time to get to the real issue because you have to efficiently get through the emotional reaction. And so if we're having a difficult conversation, I was coaching a CEO just yesterday on this big upset, and he was relaying to me what he was upset about, but I was able to quickly show him that, well, what part of that is fact? Well, it's all fact. I said, well, no, let's take that up. This is your opinion. This is your perspective. Okay, but when this happened, how did it make you feel? And he said, oh man, I felt like this. So I said, okay, so your feelings are factual. You own those feelings, but your perspective is just that. It's just your perspective. It's your opinion. Now we have to get the other person's perspective of what they're seeing and how they're feeling. And you can't take away their feelings. So when they say, hey, when you told me this is how I felt, they felt that. But you may not have intended to have them feel that way. So no, absolutely not. Okay. Well, now we can get to the real issue. You see, so we have to go through the process efficiently. And a lot of times having a third party facilitator helps you do that. But I've practiced this even in my marriage. I've been married 45 years. And, we've had to go through these quite often. And quite honestly, I think my wife is probably even better at it or not. She'll just say, hey, we got to clear something. We have a signal. Hey, we got to clear an issue. And I go, okay. Well, what is, I used to always want to run and hide. I said, okay, well, what's the issue? And I don't think about, I did something wrong. I just think about, hey, there's an issue there that we got to look at, and we're going to look at it together. And we're going to look at, and over these 45 years, I'm going out of business into a personal relationship because it's all the same. We've had dealt some very difficult problems together, very challenging problems. And yet our relationship has grown and become healthier and healthier. And so that's the objective, even in business, isn't it? And you said that's what you learned from Tony Robbins. I hadn't heard that, but I think I am a big subscriber to, is if you can handle efficiently difficult conversations and get the problem resolved, I mean, really resolved it, and your relationship expands. You grow your relationship. And so you become related to others. And so when you have a related team, then that is one of the most rewarding outcomes you could ever have in leading a business, is having a team that is so related that you can accomplish anything, quite honestly. It's when you don't have that relationship, that relatedness, people are fighting to be right. No, but once you've got a team that's fully related, they're only fighting for what's right, only fighting for what's right.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I love that. I didn't realize we'd be having a conversation around, how to have a longevity in your marriage and relationships. But you're absolutely right, Rob. It's so true. It's so true. And I think as human beings, very often we avoid having those difficult conversations, right? Because we don't want to cause offense, upset. It can be painful. But 9 times out of 10, they don't just resolve themselves. They normally get bigger and bigger until there's an event or there's an explosion or something happens that brings it to a head. And I always think, how many relationships, how many marriages, how many, situations could have been resolved if only we'd communicated properly. And I think there's a big lesson for all of us, actually, in what you've just shared there. So thank you.
Bring it back to a family business, particularly if you have siblings or children. I see this a lot in the parent-child relationship. The parent wants to protect the child. Oh, I don't want them to know that we are having some financial issues. I want to protect them. Well, that's not going to help them. You want to prepare them, and you want to have those difficult conversations with them. You want to be able to be a bearer of bad news so they can be part of the solution and learning of it. And so and then it just builds your relationship inside the business as well as inside your family. And it's the same true for employees as well. So anyway, you asked the question, do I ever feel like a counselor? I don't know. I just feel like somebody trying to help human beings just be better together, just be better together.
I love that. And also I when you were saying around what, the one key question, why?
Yeah.
And super simple, but that's, why do we exist? What's our
Right.
purpose? Why are
Right.
we upset about this? Why do
Yep.
we care? Why are we here? Why, isn't it? And I think if you understand that, then actually you're coming back to your purpose-led start to the conversation. If you understand your why, then you're going to enjoy what you do, be better at it, add more value. Whereas actually sometimes we can be fulfilling someone else's why and not actually our own, right?
Yep. Right. Totally.
And that
Totally agree.
happens as well. That happens as well. So listen, let's want to talk about growing businesses for a second, Rob, if I may, because clearly you've seen businesses through every stage of maturity, from startup, scale up, maturity, sometimes maybe getting into that decline phase, and then you need to re-energize or sort of reposition. So when it comes to kind of growth, and you've 10x businesses, I mean, you've ran big businesses and you exited and sold, etc., and listed. What do you think is the most overlooked lever that gets missed in order to scale a business? What would you say is sort of underutilized or overlooked that actually could help a business scale maybe more than they have done?
I'm going to answer it as governance. And let me break that down. When you don't have the appropriate governance structures in place, that will limit your growth. So let me define governance from my perspective. In the most simplest terms, it's how do you make decisions and how do you handle conflict? That's governance. That's how Rob Ferguson defines it. And typically in family, now I'm going to move to family businesses. In family businesses, that founder or whoever the leader is, second gen or third gen, whoever's the lead, they are in the center of the hub of all the decisions, typically. And so they become the bottleneck eventually. Now we have some very high performing entrepreneurs who are leading, some nice sized businesses, but they reach a ceiling as well. And so we have to build the appropriate decision structures. We have to make sure we have the appropriate management systems in place. Got to have a good system for managing to get the cadence of the business going. So that's what I mean about governance. Once you can put the underpinnings in, right, getting all your lug boat, your lug nuts tightened on the wheels of the race car. You got to make sure all of that's working. Then you can be off to the races. That's the first, and then second, obviously, is the team. What we were just talking about, the culture of your organization, the team that you have. You got the right people in the right seats on the bus, like Jim Collins talked about. Good to great, and you got the right structure, governance systems in place. Now you're off to the races. You can really make that work. But unfortunately, in the family business world that I'm in, most of them are first generation founders. They're that's where they're getting stuck. It's them. And so we have to help them look at themselves and look at the reality of what's really going on, and then to help them move get out of this centralization of decision making and decentralize that. But once you decentralize, you got to make sure you got the right people in spot. So that's where we spend most of our time working to help prepare a company for growth.
Yeah, no, I love that actually, because, when people hear the word governance, they normally like shrink into themselves and they go, oh, God, no, this is terrible. What? Here we go again.
Yeah.
You're just going to stop me doing everything. You're using it to constrain.
Don't corporatize me, or you're making me too formal, or I just want to be a family. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. But I purposely use the word governance to try to, kind of be an impact here for hopefully some of your listeners would have disagreed with me. But I really do believe it's, how you make your decisions and how you handle conflict. You cannot grow if you don't get a good architecture system in place on how that's going to happen. And then you have to have the right team around you inside of the right culture. Those are the kind of like the three elements of the secret sauce of having a growth oriented company, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I often say, let go to grow, because like you say, you can become the blocker, and you have to put your ego to one side, put all of that. And actually you were saying, do the right thing. Is this the right thing for the business, for the clients, for the customers, for the employees, or actually are you part of the problem? And
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can see that you must do this in a very elegant way, Rob, that gets people on board with it. But hugely important advice here. And if we're talking about succession and legacy and long-term thinking, etc., just as before I move to some final questions, if a founder is listening to this today, and we do get lots of founder-led businesses and entrepreneurs that listen to Brave, Bold, Brilliant, but if a founder wants their business to outlive them and really wants that legacy that you're so passionate about, what do you think are the first sort of 3 big decisions that they need to make in order for that to become a reality, do you think?
Yeah. Well, we've kind of hit on them, right? The first big decision, are you going to be a family first or a business first family?
Yep.
Okay. And define that. Secondly, we just talked about it, getting the right governance structure and systems in place where you are with your business life cycle. Obviously, if you're at the startup phase, you don't need a board of directors that's got fiduciary responsibility, but I highly recommend it, a board of advisors or some third party that can be advising you along the way. So I would say that's it. And then thirdly, it's making sure that you're really managing your talent and your culture. I'm kind of lumping them together because you only gave me 3 things, but it really comes down to talent and culture. Those to me are the 3 things that the founders should really be focusing in on.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I mean, I've been in the company of many business founders who have sold their business and they thought it was going to be the happiest day of their life, Rob. They've built a business, it's been their baby, they've toiled away for many, many years, they've built value, they've got a really big valuation and a nice big check and money in the bank.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh my God, it was the worst day of my life. And they weren't expecting it, which often is linked back to purpose, I think. What's the purpose? What are you going to do next? What's going to get you out of bed in the morning now? But have you experienced that scenario, Rob, where you've worked with founders and then it's been a real shock for them?
I did. In fact, I was actually with this founder I'm going to be using as an example. I was last month. It was just a few minutes before midnight. I get a phone call on my mobile and I saw who it was. So I picked it up and I knew we were closing the transaction. So funding was going to happen, right after midnight. And he was in tears. It was the worst day of his life. I was really worried about him. And I didn't realize how entrenched his identity was in that business. Because he was going to get life-changing wealth. But, like you said, this unbelievable amount of cash was coming to him that he never had before. And that is really what shook me to the core, that I had failed. I had failed in preparing him for the sale. I had done an unbelievable job in preparing the business for the sale. In fact, I did an unbelievable job. He ended up getting almost twice the valuation that he thought that he originally got from his initial offer letters. But I had failed him. I had failed preparing him. And that changed me immensely. So now when I'm working with owners, we look at your business readiness, but we're going to look at your personal readiness. We're going to look at, how ready are you emotionally? How ready are you financially? Then we'll look at your business and then we're going to look at the quality of your business, things like that. So that I have seen that and been there. And if the owner is not personally ready, then you shouldn't, as advisors, if we're transaction advisors, we get in love with the transaction, right? You get to become a deal junkie. That's not me. I'm not a deal junkie. I just want what's best for that business and for that family. Both are equally important to me. And so sometimes they're not ready. We got to get them ready. And that takes time. And so sometimes that delays the sale. But anyway, definitely have experienced that.
Yeah, it can be very emotional, can't it? And
Yeah.
like you say, it's not just, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, Rob. You know, business is human, it's personal.
Yeah.
And like you say, if your identity is so closely wrapped into what you've created as a founder, then you are going to feel a bit lost at the end of that, because you have to create that next phase of your life and who you are, you know, and you start asking those questions like you did when you took your sabbatical out from corporate and all those good things. So yeah, it's, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, again, you know, if anyone is listening to this and you're in the process or you're thinking about selling and exiting, you know, absolutely don't just think about the business, think about your entire kind of life purpose as well, and how it all hangs together, and the family as well, the other people that are related and affected.
Jeannette, there's a really good book that I'd recommend. It's called Halftime. I don't know if you know about it. Bob Buford wrote it. Bob has passed away since. But it's just a really good, easy book for anybody. You can be any career executive that is, you know, kind of at that stage in their career, looking at retirement or looking at leaving their family business or selling their business. I would highly recommend to read it to as part of your readiness, your preparation. Because let's face it, we're not going to be in that business forever. None of us will be. None of us will be. So let's prepare and let's enjoy the second half of our life. Maybe even more so. That's what I have found. My first half, I was happy. It was a great life. But I'm certainly much happier now and more fulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. And that can happen when we, you know, when we reach a certain age. And for some people, you know, they have multiple careers, multiple business lives, multiple reinventions of who they are, you know. So that's a great recommendation. We love a good book recommendation. Thank you, Rob. So yeah, we'll be adding that onto the show notes as well, so everyone can access that. So Rob, I'm just going to come to some final questions, if you'll indulge me. So, you know, when you look back over your career and you give a lot of advice to everyone else, and you've shared a huge amount on this conversation that we've had, so we really appreciate that. Can you think of any standout advice for you personally that's helped you through your career journey or your personal life, actually?
Yeah, I would say one. I've had mentors along the way ever since I was 14 years old, and they're very helpful. But one that comes to the top of my mind is there. You can accomplish anything if you don't care who gets the credit for it. So to me, that has kind of been my cornerstone of learning how to lead through influence and how to get more done with and through others versus trying to maybe aggrandize my position or my idea. Yeah. So anyway, so that's one piece of advice that I like to live by.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. And that's also around putting our egos to one side and doing what's right, as opposed to thinking about, well, hang on, this is all about me. No, it's about what's right. Yeah, I love that. That's great. Wonderful piece of advice. And Rob, if you could describe this year in one word, what would it be and why?
Dynamic. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, what the future has. And we just, we can't worry about it. I think we can anticipate, we can try to control the things that we can control, you know, prepare for the things that may not be in our control, but there's stuff we just don't know. We don't know. And so I just, to me, it's a dynamic year.
It certainly is. I would wholeheartedly agree with your choice of word for this year, most definitely. Now, Rob, we were chatting before we pressed record on this interview, and I was talking about music and how we have a Spotify playlist from our guests, and just wondered if there was any particular type of music or any particular artist or song that you might want to add to that, Rob.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned I'm in Houston, Texas. I grew up in Texas, so I love country western songs, and so a lot of my artists are um, Willie Nelson. I would even say some old ones, but yeah. So just my favorite song is Amarillo by Morning. And the reason why that's my favorite song is I was driving from Lubbock, Texas, back to College Station, Texas, where my school was, from a football game with a girl who's now my wife. And that's where I fell in love, is driving through Amarillo, and that song was playing as I was driving. And she was asleep, and I had some friends in the backseat too. So anyway, that's my favorite song.
Well, I love that. Well, see, look, it brings back such a great memory for you as well. And yeah, absolutely perfect. We've not had that, so we will add that onto our playlist. So thank you, Rob.
Well,
That's
I hope you all enjoy it.
That's a great addition. So thank you. So final question, Rob. You know, we used to hear the phrase or the words brave, bold, brilliant. What does that mean to you?
Let's see. Brave, I would say live your dream. Bold, stand for truth. And brilliant, do what's right.
Perfect. Well, you've touched on every single aspect, I think, in that little summary there that we've talked about in the last 50 minutes that we've been chatting. So thank you, Rob. You've been a really great guest. I've so enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I have too. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
That's what we like to do. Business should be fun.
Yes, it should be, because it's hard.
Exactly. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you.